Alejandro Ngui lost over 210 million pesos in a massive corporate fraud scheme orchestrated through Corp and Power Merge. Before the perpetrators could hide the money, Ngui secured a writ of preliminary attachment, a court order designed to aggressively freeze the defendant's assets. Looking at this physical toll plaza infrastructure, you see the generator of the plaintiff's primary target, UEM Mara's project income from the Manila-Cavite tollway project. The plaintiff targeted this particular revenue stream because he alleged that the fraud's mastermind, Luis Juan Verada, used the stolen funds to acquire personal interests in UEM Mara. Ngui believed placing these specific tollway assets under strict court control was the only practical way to guarantee the recovery of his missing millions. Years later, the Philippine Court of Appeals ordered a deep dive into UEM Mara's financial statements, determined to keep the garnishment alive by tracking down the hidden tollway income. Yet, in 2020, the Supreme Court issued a decision that entirely dissolved the garnishment, completely bypassing the financial evidence gathered by the lower court. The Supreme Court did not care about the actual millions that the Court of Appeals was trying to trace. This paradox is governed directly by the strict procedural boundaries found in Rule 57 of the Rules of Court. A preliminary attachment is strictly an ancillary remedy. It possesses zero independent legal existence outside of its parent lawsuit. Understanding the ancillary nature of Rule 57 transforms this case from a chaotic corporate mystery into a cold, predictable procedural execution. This diagram shows the two specific purposes of a preliminary attachment under Rule 57: seizing property to prevent its dissipation and securing it for a potential creditor claim. This introduces the concept of custodia legis, property held tightly under the physical control of the court. The vital limitation here is that custodia legis functions strictly as a temporary security deposit, bound entirely to a future judgment in the main case. We can map this by constructing the top track, which represents the main action, civil case number 0099006, for the sum of money. Running concurrently beneath it is the bottom track, representing the ancillary writ and the garnishment notices sent to freeze UEM Mara's income. As long as the top track remains alive and unresolved, the bottom track is legally permitted to exist, trapping corporate assets in legal limbo. Starting in the year 2000, a fierce, multi-year interlocutory battle raged exclusively on that bottom track. The Philippine Reclamation Authority defended against the garnishment by submitting a letter claiming that no net revenue had been approved for UEM Mara yet. This split-screen graphic shows Ngui's counter-evidence, UEM Mara's audited financial statements reporting roughly 171 million pesos in toll revenues for that period. Relying entirely on the PRA's claim that no attachable income existed, the trial court immediately lifted the attachment. Ngui appealed to the Court of Appeals, demanding they reinstate the garnishment based on his financial documentation. The Court of Appeals agreed, ruling that the trial court committed grave abuse of discretion by ignoring the 171 million peso discrepancy and failing to hold a proper hearing. This intense dispute created a massive factual distraction, tricking the appellate court into treating the ancillary writ as if it were the main lawsuit. To resolve the paradox, we have to pull out of the financial weeds and refocus entirely on the top track, the actual civil action for the sum of money. In 2017, a pivotal event altered the entire timeline. The Supreme Court decided the main case with absolute finality. This node diagram maps the substantive legal test required to win the main action. Proving a cause of action requires a right, an obligation, and a breach. Applying this strict test to UEM Mara, the framework fails to connect. The company was a legally distinct entity from Power Merge and the primary fraudsters. UEM Mara was absent from the critical sans recourse transactions and the secretive side agreements that orchestrated the fraud. Because of this absence, the Supreme Court reached a definitive conclusion. Ngui completely lacked a valid cause of action against UEM Mara. The Supreme Court officially absolved UEM Mara from any solidary liability regarding the stolen 210 million pesos. By 2017, the primary legal engine driving the case against UEM Mara had stopped. Because the main claim was resolved, the attachment no longer had a case to secure. Returning to our dual-track timeline, The top track is now permanently halted at a node marked Final Absolution. The governing doctrine from cases like Adlawan v. Judge Tamol dictates that an attachment is merely an adjunct. It cannot survive its parent suit. The main action's death instantly snaps the tether, causing the entire bottom track and the legal vault holding the assets to dissolve. Because the attachment cannot exist independently, the appellate court's demand to investigate that 171 million pesos was rendered moot. The appellate court's factual investigation became legally irrelevant. It was a procedural phantom fighting over a ghost of a writ. Fierce evidentiary disputes about attached property become moot the moment the defendant is absolved in the main action. This brings us to the final ruling of the 2020 Supreme Court decision regarding the UEM Mara tollway income. The attachment writ was lifted not because the tollway income didn't exist, but because the writ itself had lost its legal justification to exist. Like fog clearing from this maze, this case illustrates the danger of getting lost in the factual weeds during appeals over provisional remedies. The life of any Rule 57 attachment is entirely borrowed from the lifespan of the principal claim it serves. When the principal action fails, the ancillary remedy must unconditionally fall with it, releasing all property from custodia legis back to the absolved party.